Hi, my name is Luke Cunningham, and I'd like to talk to you tonight about the public historical site that is State Street, Boston, Massachusetts. Now, during the American Revolution, State Street would have been known as King Street, the famous location of the British Customs House, outside of which the Boston Massacre occurred. Boston, Massachusetts is a hotbed for American Revolutionary history. And it's just one of the many famous locations that can be found on the Freedom Trail tours offered in Boston that takes visitors on a step-by-step trail of historical sites that leads to a very complete understanding of the Revolutionary era. However, the value of this particular site is the sense of importance and the historical significance of standing in the exact place where 5 colonial protesters, rioters, were shot by the occupying British forces. Now, one thing that would be great for visitors to understand is a little bit of background before they go to this historical site so that they can understand, why are there colonials protesting? Why are there British soldiers in the 13 colonies? And the crux of the issue really all centered around taxation. Taxation had long fractured the relationship between the 13 colonies and Great Britain. The colonies in their very core felt that taxation by a legislative body in which they received no representation was wrong. Whereas the Crown felt that it was common sense that the 13 colonies should bear some of the financial burdens that were brought upon by the French and Indian War and the continued upkeep of the British soldiers that were stationed here in the 13 colonies for the protection of the colonies. Nonetheless, the 13 colonies had long resisted these taxes based on their principles. Enter in Charles Townshend. Charles Townshend believed that he had come up with a series of taxes that would be far more palatable to the 13 colonies. He called these the Townshend Acts. The reason why Charles Townshend felt that these would be a far more favorable option for the 13 colonies is because these taxes were an indirect tax on imported goods rather than the direct taxes that had preceded them. Now, what Charles Townshend came to understand, as we know today, that the 13 colonies were opposed to all taxes, whether indirect or direct. Now, when these taxes had also failed to be collected, whether it be smuggling, whether it be violence towards customs officials, which had actually become fairly common in revolutionary towns like Boston, the British Crown felt that it was necessary to station troops there in Boston to help with the collection of the taxes, protection of the customs officials, and the maintaining of social order. Honestly, at that point, the writing was on the wall. Boston was already upset with the encroachment of their personal liberties as far as actual taxation. Now they were being forced to harbor foreign soldiers, an even bigger affront to their personal liberties. Violence was bound to happen, and on March 5th, 1770, the Boston Massacre occurred. I have here a picture of the actual event. This is from the Library of Congress. This is a printed off digitized version of an engraving and later print that was sold by Paul Revere. Paul Revere was a member of the Sons of Liberty, a revolutionary group formerly known as the Loyal Nine. And what Paul Revere and the other members of the Sons of Liberty found on March 5th, 1770 was a rallying cry. It was a godsend for them. It gave them a picture. And the old saying, give me a picture and I'll give you a war. Well, they took that very literally. They took this opportunity to take the Boston Massacre and turn it into a lesson to the other 12 colonies. This is what happens when the crown encroaches on our liberties. This is what happens when they're allowed to tax. This is what happens when they're allowed to station troops in our homes. The historical lessons here are plentiful, and I would highly recommend a trip to see this great historical site of the American Revolution. Thank you. Nice to meet y'all.